Conclave, a hidden secret, a crucial election. Faith put to the test. The conclave to elect the new pope is led by Dean Thomas Lawrence, a man of great integrity, respected by all, who acts as the moral guardian of the church. Inside the Sistine chapel, three main factions clash. The liberal group, represented by Bellini, who dreams of a more modern and inclusive church. The traditionalists, embodied by Tremblay and Adeyemi, focused on defending doctrine, and the reactionary faction, led by Tedesco, pushing for a closed and uncompromising church. At first, Lawrence openly supports Bellini to counter Tedesco and has no personal ambition, at least so he believes. The first votes favor Adeyemi, who gains support with his charisma, but just as he seems close to victory, a scandal erupts, a relationship with a nun uncovered by Lawrence, who wants to ensure the new pope is above reproach. With Adeyemi forced to withdraw, the votes shift to Tremblay. Bellini, aware he can no longer win, suggests his allies support Tremblay to block Tedesco. However, Lawrence does not trust Tremblay. Since the pope's death, suspicions of possible scandals involving him have circulated. When Lawrence discovers that Bellini's support for Tremblay was obtained with the promise of a career advancement, he decides to investigate further. Torn between a desire for justice and growing ambition, Lawrence commits a forbidden act. He breaks the seal on the late pope's private quarters and finds documents revealing Tremblay's vote buying. Moreover, he learns that Tremblay was the one who brought the nun to Rome, which led to Adeyemi's downfall. Faced with the truth, Lawrence informs the conclave, bringing Tremblay's candidacy down. At this point, Bellini withdraws and chooses to openly support Lawrence. For the first time, Lawrence begins to savor the idea of becoming pope and, in the next vote, casts his ballot for himself instead of Bellini. But at that very moment, a car bomb explodes in Rome, causing casualties and throwing the conclave into turmoil. Tedesco uses the climate of fear to strengthen his stance on closing the church, but unexpectedly, Benitez steps forward. A missionary cardinal who has spent his life in the world's most challenging regions, often in war-torn countries. Newly appointed as cardinal by the late pope, Benitez is participating in his first conclave, and though he has always remained outside the main factions, from the very beginning chose to support Lawrence, even when Lawrence asked him to vote for Bellini. With a passionate plea for openness and mercy, Benitez wins the esteem and trust of the other cardinals. Lawrence, moved by his words, finds his original spirit again, free of ambition. The assembly converges on Benitez, who is elected pope under the name Innocent XIV. Only after the election, Lawrence is informed by a trusted collaborator that the late pope had financed Benitez's trip to a Swiss clinic specializing in specific treatments. Suspicious, Lawrence goes to Innocent XIV to seek the truth. In their private conversation, Benitez admits to having female anatomy and reveals that the late pope was aware of his condition. He shares that, upon discovering this, he had considered resigning from the priesthood, but the pope convinced him to stay. Benitez explains he was supposed to undergo a hysterectomy, but ultimately chose not to, accepting his identity as a gift, not a mistake. Lawrence listens, at first troubled, but then deeply moved by Benitez's courage and faith. He decides to keep the secret, understanding that the real strength of the church lies in embracing humanity in all its forms. The film ends with Lawrence alone in the Vatican courtyard, finally free from the weight of ambition and doubt. In the distance, the roar of the crowd gathered in St. Peter's Square for the new pope can be heard. The scene closes with Lawrence, in silence, finding peace in his faith. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to the channel and let us know which series, movie, or book you'd like to see summarized next.